Hello and welcome to the Fire in the Belly show. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by the Dorsee Ross. Good afternoon to you, Dorsey. Great to have you on the show.
Afternoon.
Listen,
Afternoon. Thanks for having me.
it's great to have you on. Great to have you on. So, Dorsey, tell us, who are you, what do you do, and where are you from?
I am from Pennsylvania, originally from New York, Lindenhurst, New York. I am a minister and I travel around speaking and sharing my story.
What sort of minister then? What sort of ministry do you do?
I travel around and speak and share my story. And my title, whatever you want to call it, evangelist, and I travel around, the country and sharing my story about what God has done in my life and with my disability.
So, just for listeners, talk to us. Talk to us about your disability. What exactly do you have? What are you gifted with?
Right. Well, my disability is I was born with a birth defect called aplet syndrome, which is a birth defect of the hands and the face. And when I was born, my forehead was pushed out with my eyes and nose were pushed back into my head, and my fingers and toes were fused together. I had no individual movement of them. And because of this, and I had no skull opening as well, usually babies are born with a skull opening, or another word for it would be a short spot, to allow the baby to grow and his or her brain to grow and to function normally. I did not have this, and because of that, the doctors thought that I would become brain dead and said to my parents, he's not going to survive, he's not going to make it. You might as well put him into a institution and sign him away. Thankfully, because of my parents' faith and their trust in God, they said, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to put him away. We're just going to take him home and see what, God was going to do with him. And it was back in January 16th, 1977. So back in those days, they didn't have the testing and the knowledge and even understanding of, what exactly was going to happen, what exactly was going to take place with me. And there were other doctors there that told my parents, because I also have fused toes, which to this point I haven't even had them operated on to separate them, because for the most part I'm able to walk, quite normally and able to run and do all the things that, most, quote unquote normal people can do. But, while I was growing up, the doctors said to my parents, he may have to wear braces because we don't think he'll be able to walk as well as, other people. And, growing up, most people would tell me, hey, you're walking faster than, all of us combined.
Sometimes your weakness is your strength, right? You sort of say, well,
Oh, absolutely.
You get on with it. Why not? Why not? I love that. So, if I've done my math right, so that makes you 44. Have I got that right?
I am. I'm 44.
There you go. So you've survived. Obviously, we have the joy of chatting to you today. So your parents were absolutely right to have faith in you and faith in the child that you were at the time. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Even, doctors even told my parents, I don't know who these doctors were because they never really talked about it and whatnot. But they even told my parents that, we don't think he'll live past the age of 18. And, there's really, for the most part, if you have the operations, like I did, you can live, mostly a normal lifespan, but you never know. You just never know what's gonna happen really with anybody.
No, absolutely. I mean, that sort of, as you say, you've had your own journey to go through. I did sort of laugh slightly. You talked about, whatever normal is. I mean, I suppose for you, you're normal, right? This is your version of you, and we're all we're all different. We're all unique in our own way, and we're all normal according to ourselves, right?
Right. Yep.
And tell me, so were your parents? Did they have a strong faith then? Is that where a lot of this, the ministry side, is coming for you, or is that something that's grown with you?
No, I think that's something that's grown, within me. Growing up, I started to go to, youth group and started to be a part of the youth. And, unlike the kids and the teenagers and some of the younger kids in the outside world, they would, pick on me and they would, call me names and stare at me and, point fingers at me. And thankfully for the, kids and the young people in the church, they loved me. They accepted me. They treated me like, they would anybody else. And I just started to, get a heart for the youth and, you know, wanting to, speak to them, wanting to minister to them, wanting to encourage them, with their own walk and with their own faith. And that's how, part of the reason why I went on to do ministry and, work to speak to the youth. And, so it was mostly my own faith journey and my own, faith in God of what He wanted me to do for my own life that had led me to do what I do today.
Oh wow! So I mean, interesting. I mean, have you found over the years that actually, children or youth have been more accepting of you, or is that? I mean, I don't want to be too generalistic here, but I mean, are generally our youth more accepting, more open to, you or is it just a connection you had at that time?
I think as I grew up, there was still, as you said, they're accepting more of me. And, they'll come up to me, they'll say hello. I had a little girl in church this past week that, came up to me and said hello and, gave me a high five. And, they would look at my hands and, see my fingers. And I think they realized, that they were different, but, they wouldn't, say, hey, why are your fingers different? Or, they wouldn't call me names or anything, so I think from a parent's perspective as well, where they may have been taught, hey, look, you're going to, you know, run into people who are different and who look different and who act differently at times. And maybe with me going there, they maybe told their daughters and their sons, hey, you're going to meet someone this weekend who, may look different than you. And, just be kind, be nice, be accepting to them.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's something to actually teach that from the very start and to have that sort of going into. Tell me, I mean, when you were young, I mean, what did Dorsey want to do when he grew up? What was the original plan?
There was a lot of different things that I thought about, when I was growing up. There were times when I thought about, even becoming a nurse at one point. And because I was in and out of the hospital a lot growing up, I've had over 68 operations over my lifetime to, reconstruct my face and to, separate my fingers and, to do all those different operations to, make me, who I am today and make me look the way I am today and to be able to live even as long as I have lived. So I thought about, one point maybe going, giving back to the community and giving back to those who, helped me out. And then I thought about, all the blood and guts that I would look at type of thing. And said, nah, that's probably not what I wanted to do, what I want to do. I thought about maybe becoming, working with the Coast Guard or, becoming a lifeguard or, even doing, I love technology. I love, computers and, maybe doing something with that, working with computers. But none of that really, panned out, because, that was just when I was younger and in my younger teens. And I realize now that, God had a better and greater plan for my life.
Wow. So how was school for you then?
It was very difficult for me. It was very difficult for me. I would have to have, tutoring at home when I was home, recuperating from my surgeries and from all the operations that I had to undergo. And, learning was very difficult for me. I have a learning disability, so they say, but, math was very difficult for me. I can't do algebra. I can't do all those high tech, math equations.
And neither can
So
probably 90% of the population. So
yeah, right.
it's like it looks like we've all got a problem.
So so it was very difficult for me. Tests weren't that easy for me. So as I got older, I started to think about, what I would do after I graduated from high school. And there was this one point where I would have an IEP meeting, which was to determine and to talk about what I would do after I graduated, because not many students, I went to school for people with disabilities. And, 100% of the kids that I went to school with all had some type of disability. And not all of them went on to college. Some of them went on to live in group homes. Some of them went on to just to go home and to live at home with their parents. Some of them went on to college. And, that was one of the things that we talked about. And at this meeting, there was a high school history teacher there, and he was asked, do you think that Dorsey will be able to make it in college? And he said, no, I don't think that he'll be able to make it in college. I don't think he has the ability to make it in college. And my mom was at this meeting, and they had asked me, what do you think? Do you think that you have the ability to make it in college? And I said, yeah, I think I have the ability to make it in college. I think, I can do it. Because growing up, my parents always, you know, encouraged me to try and figure out, what are the things that Dorsey can do? What are the things that Dorsey can't do? And from that, I learned, what I could and could not do. And from that, there weren't many things that I wasn't able to do. Even if I had to adapt to a certain way of doing, that particular thing, I figured out for myself that I was able to do that. For example, I can't lift my hands above my head because there's limitations in my bones and in the, in my elbows and everything that I can't lift my hands above my head. But I was still able to play basketball. I could throw it, from, my waist up. That's the way I'll throw the basketball to try and make, basket. My fingers are, stubby. They're not the full size fingers as yourself or somebody else. So, going bowling, doing a normal, bowling was difficult for me because I wasn't able to put my hand all the way back. So what I discovered was I would put my hand in the bowling ball and just throw the bowling ball down the lane. Not, just, throwing the bowling ball down the lane. And that's the way I learned to go bowling. So going back to the story about my high school history teacher, my mom said, well, if Dorsey thinks he'll be able to make it in college, he will. So I entered Queensboro Community College, and the first few weeks of going to college were very difficult for me. And I started to wonder, was this really what I wanted to do and what God had for me to do? And I even had a discussion with my mom about the possibility of maybe even quitting and looking to do something else. And my mom said, look, take it a few more days and see what will happen. And at that time, I went to church and they had a people come to speak, and it was the Chi Alpha Christian group, which is a secular based, it was a Christian based group, but on secular campuses where they come in and do Bible studies. And I learned and realized that they had a Chi Alpha Christian group on that campus. And I went to that group and I got to meet new people, new friends. And one of the friends that I'm, met there, I'm still good friend with. And from that time on, till I graduated 4 years later, it was like I was still nervous at times. I still didn't pass all my classes up, I didn't get the 4.0 GPA. I didn't give my valedictorian speech. But the sicknesses I had and the, trouble sleeping at night that I had was taken away. And it was like God was saying to me, here are the people that will help, support, and encourage you during this time while you're here on this campus.
Oh, so what did you actually study in the end?
At the secular campus, I studied liberal arts. It was a liberal arts degree from that campus. And then after that is when I went on to Bible college to study youth ministry.
And I love that. I mean, the fact that you'd actually taken a bit of a, I mean, I suppose when you were doing the arts, had you already the ministry in mind at that point? I mean, what point
I did.
The ministry sort of as a direction come into play for you?
No, I had, even when I was in community college, I had, the view and the goal was to go into the ministry at some point, down the line. And in August of 2000 is when I, graduated from community college, and I entered right away. I entered what is now the University of Valley Forge to study youth ministry. And even at that time, schooling was difficult for me. And one of the hardest things that I had to face and to overcome was the fact that in August of 2002, I was trying to get a hold of my mom. My mom and myself were very close, growing up throughout my whole life, and my dad as well. And I was trying to get a hold of her that day. It was the very beginning of, the semester, and I wasn't able to get a hold of her. And I finally got a call from my sister that she was in the hospital and that she had had a stroke. And during that same time, I had fallen on the campus and broken my arm. And I had a friend take me to the hospital, and because of the way I broken my arm and the way my arms are, I had to get the arm operated on to put pins in the arm. And then 3 months later, in December 7th, 2002, I got another call from my sister, similar situation where I got a call from her that my mom had passed away.
It's always tough that's tough news to receive at any point in time, and it sounds like your mother has been a particularly strong light in your life.
Oh, absolutely, definitely.
You were saying, I mean, do you take after your mother? Is that do you get your strength and resilience from your mother or your father?
I think it's both. We definitely say it's both. From both of them.
Yeah. And you mentioned, have you many siblings then?
I have one older sister, and I have a middle sister, but she unfortunately passed away back in 2014. And that's the other thing. Going back to when I was born, my older sister was 21 years older than I am. My middle sister was 16 years older than I am. So, I would say, I would use the old cliche that I was the surprise of the family, because my mom, when she started to gain weight and realized that she was gaining weight, she, went to the hospital and to the doctor thinking that she had some type of tumor growing inside of her. If my dad was 45 and my mom was 41 when they had me, so they were definitely not expecting to have another child. You know, so when they examined my mom and said, "Look, thankfully you don't have a tumor growing inside of you, but you do have a baby boy growing inside of you. You're expecting to have another baby."
That's great. I mean, that's lovely news, isn't it? It's sort of, as you say, take something that's fearful and sort of worrying and have something that's wonderful instead. It's such a beautiful gift, I suppose is the right word.
Right? Yeah, definitely.
What overall then? I mean, so I suppose going up and then going into the ministry. I mean, that was a calling. Is that a life purpose for you? Do you think?
Okay, say that again.
Is the ministry is that your life's purpose? Do you think is that your calling of why you're here?
I think it is. I started to, as I said earlier, I was thinking about doing youth ministry, but that never really worked out. I went on interviews and you know, um, putting my resume to do ministry, youth ministry in the church, and each church would say, would pass on me and say, no, we're not interested, would say, well, we'll just look at your disability. We're not going to look at your resume. And, even that church, would pass on me. So when I came home from Bible college after I graduated, I, you know, started to think even more about, what I would do. And my church, where I used to attend, they gave me the opportunity to share my story and share my testimony. And it was at that time where I felt, God was saying to me, here the people, me, send this out and see what I will do with it. And all I had was, you know, a, was the video of my testimony and of my story, and just, references from the pastor and, a leader in the ministry. And I just started making cold calls and started, introducing myself to different pastors, saying, here's what I want to do. I want to come to your church and speak and share my story about what God has done in my life. Would you allow me to do this? And that's how the ball got rolling. An interesting thing about this whole thing was back when I was in the youth group, there was a youth leader there, and he looked at me one day and he said, Dorsey, I see you traveling around, sharing your story of what God has done in your life. And at that time, I wasn't thinking about, traveling around sharing my story. This is not what I had in mind. But obviously God had something else in mind. But because of my, speech impediment, and because of my, you know, speech, impediment, not a lot of people fully understanding me at times or what I would say. Growing up, I had to have speech classes and to learn how to sound out syllables and learn how to sound out words so that people could understand me better. So traveling around speaking wasn't what I had in mind. So, you would have said to me, Dorsey, like he did, Dorsey, I see you traveling around giving your testimony. I probably would have said that you were crazy or out of your mind. Because I thought, youth ministry was what God had for me, but obviously, it wasn't. This is what, God had for me. And for the last 14 years now, this is what, I've been doing. I've been traveling around sharing my story.
I love it. Tell me, what does fire in the belly mean to you, Dorsey?
Fire in the belly would mean that you have fire and the desire in your belly to do what it is that you want to do and do what it is, the purpose that God has given you to do.
And is that something you have?
Yeah, it is.
In bucket loads by the sound of it. It's such I love the strength of your conviction. The certainty. Is that certainty always been there for you? Just that knowingness?
I mean, it, for the most part, I mean, but it's, sometimes I doubt it. Sometimes I've wondered, what it was that God had for me and what it was that God wanted me to do. Even while I'm doing this, I've wondered, you know, is this still what God wants me to do? Is this still what God has for me? How much longer will I continue to do this ministry, this traveling around, sharing my story? You know, that I think that for all of us, we have to, especially those who are Christian, we have to, continue to realize that what is the plan that God has for us, and we need to look at that and to seek that out and make sure that we are on the path that God wants us to be on.
And would you say you are where you're supposed to be at this time?
At this time, yeah. At this time, I'm still believing, I'm still, you know, feeling that this is what God has for me.
And overall, would you say do people get you?
I think for the most part, they get me.
Hmm.
I think there's some people, I mean, you're always gonna have, the doubters and the people who are gonna say, you know, who are gonna question, why you're doing what you're doing. They're gonna question and doubt, is this really what God has for Dorsey, or those different things like that.
And what would you say your superpower is then? What's your gift?
My gift is to encourage people. My gift is to inspire people to do what it is that God wants them to do. It's to continue to push on in their life circumstances, in their life trials. It's to overcome the life barriers that whether it's people that put it, whether it's the barriers that people put in front of them, or the barriers that you know Satan puts in front of them, whether it's the barriers that health and circumstances put in front of them, that they can overcome those those barriers and those circumstances.
What's what's the nicest thing someone can say to you? What's a real compliment for you? What do you love to hear?
I think the nicest compliment is that you know saying something like, you know, Dorsey, you're doing what it is that God has for you to do. Keep doing what it is that you're doing, because it's what God wants you to do.
So what I'm hearing there is like it's like a strength of purpose. It is the having the strength to continue no matter what. Because I mean, it was interesting, as you speak there, is that the gift to inspire and also the gift to overcome. And that's is it
Right.
that's as much for you as it is to demonstrate to other people and to inspire other people as well.
Absolutely.
So it's both ways, right? It's your own journey and also to help and show others that it's possible.
Absolutely. Definitely.
That's such a strong message, especially nowadays. And normal people per se. I can imagine that would be a very inspiring thing to, despite your 60 plus operations and all sort of the challenges to being in this sort of whatever this normal world is, yet you're still speaking, you're still, doing amazing things, doing amazing work. You're leading and you're inspiring others. That in itself is I mean, it's exemplary, really.
Yeah.
What's your overall do you have a clear vision of what you want to do in the longer term? What do you want to do next?
Not really. Not at this point. I think I'm taking it, step by step and day by day and year by year. I know a lot of people, they can, you know, they have a 3-year vision or a 5-year vision or maybe even a 10-year vision for their life. But really, I don't really have that. I don't really have that that mindset to be able to do that. If you would ask me what's one of the desires in your life, that you would like to accomplish, I think one of those things would be to hopefully get married, hopefully find that wife and that spouse that, God wants me to be with.
And that's, yeah, I mean, absolutely. So it's all one of life goals, and really, putting it out there. I mean, do you get much time for yourself as such, or do you tend to dedicate yourself almost fully to your ministry?
No, I get time for myself.
And
I get time, I put time, down for myself and to relax and to be able to go out and do things. Obviously, with the whole, COVID thing, we in the last year and a half, we really haven't been able to do a lot, but hopefully we'll, with everything lifting and then whatnot, we'll be able to go out and do more things.
and what's a bit of a guilt-free, guilty pleasure for Dorsey then? What's your go-to when you're you're not on duty?
um, Going out and going bowling. I love to go bowling. Love to go out, with friends and go to the movies and go to the beach.
Out and about. And is that
Yeah,
for leisure and pleasure for you? It is just a bit of downtime and just relaxing. And I mean, going to the beach and water, is that a place of relaxation and restoration for you?
yeah, it is.
Seems to be something there. There's something about water. I don't know whether it's human beings and water are either connected to water or watching water, looking at water, or being on water. For some reason, I don't know why. Whereas humans, we seem to be fascinated with it. I don't know if that comes up in the Bible, or I don't know where it comes from, but it's a
Yeah,
very common feedback I tend to get from people on the show.
right.
Does that make any sense? I mean, I know there's quite a few references to water in the Bible. I'm just wondering, is there
Yeah,
any?
I'm not really sure where that is or why there's a connection there at all.
Yeah,
Maybe it's because we were in our mother's room for 9 months in water. Who knows?
yeah, that's true. And I don't know what statistically or whatever, we're about 70% water as well. So I don't know.
Right.
A part of us wants to get back to the water we've come from in some way, shape, or form. That's great. What are you capable of, Dorsey? Do you think? What could you do? What's possible?
You know what? The Bible says, with God all things are possible. Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. I mean, obviously we all have our limitations, but I also believe that anything's possible. As long as we put our faith in God and put our trust in Him, anything's possible.
Yeah, makes sense. What's your earliest memory?
I think sometimes my earliest memories are, going up to Maine. My dad from Maine, and going up there and having trips up there for vacation and going on different trips on vacation to different places in New York where I lived and up to Maine at times.
Yeah, and I'm just curious. I mean, do you think you've been here before as a spirit, as a body? I mean, is this your first time on Earth? Do you think?
Yeah, it's my first time on Earth. Yeah, I don't know about I don't really believe in that stuff when it comes to those things.
I was going to say, where do you sit in terms of religion, spirituality? Do do the two cross over? Do you think, or where do the two lie together?
I'm sorry, say that again?
In terms of religion or spirituality, I mean, I'm assuming obviously your background that religion would be your main. That's obviously your core belief. I mean, would you
But
find would you be spiritual as well, or do you tend to follow one or other as such?
no, I think there's a combination, with that. But mostly, I don't really know about. I wouldn't call what I have, with God religion. I would call it more of a, relationship, with Him. Whereas I have, accepted Him, as my Lord and Savior, and I have a personal relationship, with Him. And when I pray to God, I'm praying directly to Him, and I'm believing that, whatever I'm praying for, that He'll answer those prayer requests that I'm praying for.
That's super interesting. And I mean, that relationship, has that gotten stronger through time? Do you think, your relationship with God?
Yeah, it definitely has.
Why would that be the case? Is it an understanding thing, or is it a letting go, or what strengthens it, do you think?
It's definitely an understanding, thing of understanding of, who God is, and understanding of, you know, what the Bible says about God, and about, Jesus, and about, you know, about what God did for us by sending His Son to the earth. And it's the same thing with, a parent's relationship, with their son and their child. It's about, that relationship is going to grow stronger as the kids get older, and as, they may not like it when the parents, discipline them when they're younger, but as they get older, they then understand why that happened when they're younger.
Yeah, it's understanding, as you say, it's that understanding versus acceptance. And is that an ongoing relationship for you with God? I mean, in terms of, you mentioned speaking. Do you ever, do you ever see things? Do you ever, or is it mainly just in the knowingness for you?
Yeah, it's just mainly in the knowingness, of Him. I know, I've heard of people, seeing different things, and seeing, you know, spirits and whatnot, but I haven't, seen that or experienced that as of yet.
Yeah, it makes it's interesting to see where, what it is. And for you, I mean, what's your place of I suppose greatest strength then? I mean, is it the when you're getting to speak to other people? Is that when you are, you're being sort of the best version of you, if you like, you're able to give off the most energy or inspire the most? Is it in the speaking format, do you think?
It is. I believe it is, and even now when I'm doing podcasting, you know, whether it be as a guest or as a host, that's, who I am my strength as well. That's my strength, and that's, what I like to do, and the power, I guess power and whatnot.
And of course, I mean, so you have a podcast, you have your book. So give us an overview of both of those for us.
Yeah, well, my podcast, it's interesting how that started. It started after somebody actually interviewed me about, my life and about my story. And I thought about, doing that, just for fun. And it is really still for fun. I know some people, they make it to, a big deal, and they make it, to be a job, and that's fine. But, it started to, do a little bit here and there. But for whatever reason, it's become a big deal this year where I've had a lot of, guests coming on my show and, me even being, a lot of guests being on my show and even being a guest on other shows. It's starting to steamroll, more and more. So it's it's going to be interesting to see, what happens with that and, where that goes. And then as far as the book goes, I've had a lot of people throughout the years, especially in the last 10 years or so, say to me, hey, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. You need to, get a book out and, share your story with other people. And in 2016 is when the initial version came out. And I had some friends of mine say, there's some grammar errors in the book and some editing errors in the book. You may want to, redo it and have a better editor come in and help you with it. So I did that the second time, and the second time it came out in 2020, and it's pretty much perfectly edited this time, and it's on Amazon. People can buy it on Amazon either in paperback or ebook format, and that's how the book came about. Just book about my story and about my parents and about what I've been through and what God has been doing and is doing in my life.
Did you enjoy the book writing process? Because it seems to be some people love it and some people it's sort of like one time only, or it sets off a hole. They go off on a writing challenge for the rest of their life.
I mean, yeah, people. I think of myself as a write more, I guess, as a writer than an author, because I don't think I'll do another one. Maybe at some point we'll have to see what happens, because people have asked me, do I think of, have I thought about doing another one? And at this point, I don't see myself doing another one, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
I find sometimes if you were to collate your teachings, sometimes there's maybe a book there in itself. Is sort of there's a book looking at you as such.
Right.
It's quite common. I find quite often people don't realize that their story, their extension, or their teachings and their sort of because when you are speaking, do you have a sort of a script that you follow, or do you tend to when you're speaking in general, do you tend to just go with what sort of comes to you, what inspires you?
Yeah, I think most of the time it's just, what comes to me and what, inspires me. And, I take it, all of it is coming from the Bible and different stories from, from the Bible and what, I think what basically speaks to me at that time.
And what would you like as a legacy? What would you like to, have you given any thought to legacy, or
Yeah.
something you'd like to leave behind as such?
Yeah, I think, for legacy, I think I will hope that people will look at me and say, hey, Dorsey was one of those people that never gave up, that kept, going on and kept persevering in his life, regardless of what was put in front of him and what was, what happened to him. He kept on pursuing and kept on persevering in his life.
Listen, it's a, as you said, that in itself is an inspiration. So tell me, what are you great at and what are you terrible at? I always like to get the contrast.
Well, I'm terrible at, as I said earlier, I'm terrible at math.
Just don't give you an algebra test. That's okay. So we've got
exactly. That. And I think I'm great at, just encouraging people, just inspiring people I may not be perfect at it at times, but it's just, one of those things that I love to do and that I like to do.
Hmm. And do you have a favorite part of the Bible? Are you particularly drawn to any part of it?
Yeah, I like the New Testament. I like the verses that talk about overcoming and talk about persevering and talk about running the race and keep on going and not giving up in your in your life. And those are some of the ones that I draw to when I feel like giving up and I feel like you know hey, I'm having a hard time right now. Let me read Hebrews 12, or let me read you know James chapter 1, 2, and 4, or Philippians 4, different chapters like that.
Yeah. And for you, the overcoming side, and obviously, with your book as well. I mean, what does overcoming teach you?
Overcoming teaches me that I can do things. I can overcome the things that people put in front of me, that people put, you know, the people put in front of me, and that you know the struggles that I face, that I can overcome those struggles and overcome those difficulties that I've had to deal with in my life. I think sometimes, people ask me, they may say to me, well, he probably doesn't do that. So they'll ask me, hey, when I travel and when I speak, hey, how did you get here today? Well, I drove my car, and they'll be like, you drive? I'm like, yes, I can drive. I don't have any special gears, any special handles, anything. I just drive.
What do you drive out of interest?
Right now, I'm driving a 2019 Honda Civic.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, and as you said, it's sometimes that's the great leveler, isn't it? Because I mean, if I close your eyes and there's no difference, right? Because I can't see any. In fact, I see a greater awareness of you. I mean, does it heighten do you find you have heightened senses? Because almost, whilst there may be, a physical impairment as such, but do you find that actually gives you a gift, or gives you a heightened sense in terms of intuition or knowingness or anything else? Does that tend to happen?
Sometimes I think that might happen at times in my life.
Yeah, it's sort of almost. I just find it interesting, yeah, because sometimes it's that expression, your weaknesses can be your strength, if you let it be,
Right.
and that sometimes is, as you say, because I mean, do you think this has all happened for a reason? Are you where you're supposed to be, or are you? This was all intentional. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was intentional. The Bible talks about Psalms 139, 13 to 16, where it talks about how we were created in our mother's womb. How God knows, every inch of our body, He knows the hairs on our heads. So, do I, believe that it was that He created me intentionally like this? Maybe not, but I believe that it was for a reason and a purpose. It was a genetic defect in my body that caused this, but I believe that, in the end, God had a reason and a purpose for it. And what I'm doing now is that reason and that purpose.
And tell me, in terms of, with the podcasting and stuff, how have you found that? Is that something you enjoy? Because obviously communicating, sharing, speaking, that is obviously, one of your strengths, one of your things. And has the podcasting on that side, is that something that's really sort of led into your strength?
Yeah, yeah, it definitely has, because I'm now, you know, speaking to, people. I mean, I haven't, when I speak in the churches, I haven't gone overseas as of yet, but I've noticed that I've spoken to a podcast host in Australia. I'm speaking to a podcast host today in Ireland, and that just blows my mind that I'm able to do that. I look at my analytics and I see people are listening to the podcast all in all different countries. It just inspires me to know that people are listening. I think the hard thing about podcasting, and a lot of people will probably agree with me, is the back end of it and the editing of it.
Yeah, it's like the talking's the easy bit, right?
Right.
Well, I suppose the same as anything. It's a bit like even with the ministry, the hardest thing is to get there. Once you're there, you're laughing, it's getting
Right.
it's getting to the front door. The rest is easy. Once sort of
Yeah.
all the logistics. But I mean, is that I mean, that's a testament of life, really, isn't it? It's like, it's like, but that's the bit that makes you stronger, makes you better. It's the lessons on the way, and then the actual um yeah, the sort of the wisdom at the end is the easy bit. But yeah, I do think that's powerful. I mean, with podcasting, and the same, almost the legacy of a book, to have put that in to inspire people, and it's the ripple effect, really, isn't it? And I think that's core in ministries anyway, that you sow a seed, or you set off a ripple today, and that can be felt for God knows how long, and
Right.
your story, your version, your YouTube video, your show, whatever, somebody could listen to that while, in 5 years' time, while you're sleeping, and still hold that energy and power. And that's mind blowing as well. I sort of think as
Yeah.
well, and it's back to capability. Do you think you're going to heaven
Right.
when the time comes
Oh,
along,
absolutely.
yeah?
Yeah.
What I mean, do you think, are we all going to heaven? Where do you sit on this?
No, I don't believe everybody's going to heaven. Like I said earlier, you have to have that personal relationship, with Christ, and have the acceptance of knowing and believing that who God is and what Jesus has done, for us, and for us to have that relationship with Him. Unfortunately, if you don't have that relationship with with Jesus, and don't have that belief in God, then according to what I believe and what I believe the Bible tells me, unfortunately, you're not going to go to heaven.
Hmm. Hmm. And hell for you is what or where?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Hell for you? Is there a hell, and where and what is it for you?
Yeah, it is. It is. It is a little place. Where exactly it is. I'm not really sure. And it's, really, it's the same thing. With heaven, I believe that there is a little heaven, but where exactly it is. I'm not really sure. A lot of people. I mean, people say it's in the sky, and you know, somewhere, but we really don't know where it is. I don't know if we can go, to the stars, and I don't think we can see it, in the heavens or in the skies.
Yeah. It's always interesting. I mean, isn't it? You know, it's like, and it's, well, I mean, it's your belief, and that's absolutely right for you. You know, that's the main thing. Anyone that sort of, you know, really wanting to, you know, to get into, you know, get into the ministry and follow that. I mean, what's a good place for them to go to or to learn more, do you think?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you're thinking about it, if you want having that desire to do that, then I would say, you know, talk to a pastor, or if you have a mentor, talk to a mentor about it, and you know, speak to them about it and see what, you know, see what they, you know, what they would say about, you know, that desire and that, you know, belief, you know, that you have to want to go into the ministry.
Yeah. No, it's always, as you say, it's really putting it out there that so that people can grow and become the best version of themselves. Really, it's, you know, it's putting it out there for them. So tell me, I mean, if you were to describe your fire in the belly in one or two words, Dorsey, what would they be?
Okay, say that again.
If you were just to describe your fire in the belly in one or two words, what would they be?
I would say confidence and perseverance.
Why are they important for you?
Well, with confidence, I don't know if I always have confidence. I don't know if, I mean, you know, it was hard for me when I was younger to do, you know, certain things, or, you know, to do certain things. And now as I get older, I'm starting to realize that I can do those things, that you know, I'm not going to worry about what other people say or whatever people think about. I'm just going to, you know, go out and do those things. And with perseverance, you know, that's the fire in my belly, because I'm going to, you know, push forward. I'm going to keep running, you know, the race in my life, to keep doing what it is that, you know, that God wants me to do.
Well, I must say, I mean, you've inspired me in your confidence and your perseverance, you know, and you know, and all the things that you've achieved, and the strength and the insight that you show as well, and your belief, right? You know, your faith. That's really, you know, it's inspirational. It's inspirational.
Thank you.
So tell me, where can people learn more, see more, find you, track you down, stalk you, hunt you, all the rest?
People can find me on my website, you know, www.dorseeross.com or DorseeRossMinistries.com. And, you know, you can find me on Instagram at Dorsey.Ross. And you can find me on Facebook as well, you know, just Dorsey Ross.
Love it. And is there
I'm the
anything
good looking guy. You know, you can find me as the good looking guy on Facebook or Instagram.
you have to change your name to the beautiful Dorsey? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
You stand out. Is there a message you'd like to leave with the listeners?
I would love to you know, leave your listeners with, you know, keep doing what it is that you want to do in your life. Do what, you know, what's right in your life. Obviously, don't do what's wrong, but do what's right in your life, and keep, you know, pursuing what that is, and don't give up. You know, don't allow the naysayers around you, don't allow those that say that you can't or that you won't make it, you know, stop you from doing what it is that you want to do in your life.
Yeah, I love it. You know, it's making the most of it. Dorsey, listen, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. It's been awesome to hear all your insights, and I'm genuinely blown away by I think the level of your belief, your certainty, your inspiration, your perseverance and your confidence. Absolutely, it all shines through. So keep doing what you're doing. That's the main thing. Thank you.
Thank you.